We all run into people that obviously seem to think that they are right, while at the same time we feel that obviously they are wrong. This can be quite frustrating at times, but how do we know that we are the ones in the right? How does one determine what is right and wrong, true or false? Well, enter science and philosophy. Take science as an example. The scientific method is specifically designed to see empirically, to the extent to which empirical experiments can actually show anything, it shows if something can be true, if something is true, by testing if it can be true. As an example, let's say there are two people, Fred and George, and Fred says, I am actually equally as strong as you, George. Now, this is empirically testable, this is scientifically testable. So that is the hypothesis. And then that Fred and George are equally strong. Now, let's say they go to the gym and they test this, and it turns out that George is actually stronger than Fred. In other words, George can lift more, no matter what muscle group he uses, no matter what machine or dumbbell or exercise they do or perform, George always comes out on top. And well, then we can ask ourselves, well, let's say Fred ran to the gym and George went by car. Maybe Fred is fatigued then, or did Fred really eat properly? So what we do if we want to test this scientifically is that we make sure that neither of them are hungry, that they came maybe the same way, so neither of them are to the gym, that is, so neither of them are fatigued, and so on and so forth. And then we try it out. If at that point Fred and George get the same result at every exercise, every machine at the gym, let's say, all of the time, then we can say, okay, Fred seems to be equally as strong as George. He was right. But let's say that either Fred or George seems to be stronger than the other one, then this hypothesis seems to be wrong. Alternatively, maybe Fred is stronger in some muscle groups, George at some, and at some they are equally as strong. Then the answer is a bit more complex, right? That Fred is stronger in some senses and less weaker in others, whilst equally as strong in yet others on top of that. And then the same is true with philosophy. Where science uses empirical testing, philosophy uses reason and logic to see if something can be the case. And this means that science can test for things that philosophy cannot, and philosophy can test for things that science cannot. Well, so using them together is a good way of kind of covering everything. And so the philosopher will see, well, any claim X, is it true? Well, can it be true, right? Is there something, for example, that is true that implies that X is false? Or is must something be true or false that is the opposite truth value if X is true, or something to a similar effect? And in this way you can determine by determining whether or not something can be true. If something cannot be true, then it is not true. If something can be true, then you cannot say that it is true necessarily, but you can say that maybe it's true. And then in some circumstances, you can actually prove logically that something must be true, and in which case you say it is true. And logic works by saying if something is true, then what must be the case given that something is the case. So as long as we have good information to go on, then we can really determine what is true and what is not philosophically. So there, really. But maybe then, there might be some people that say that, well, that's good and all, but surely philosophy or science cannot treat everyday little things, or how to run a country, or how to raise a child, or how to live a good life. Well, how to live a good life is normally one of those typical philosophical questions, right? And so is how to run a country. Maybe poor examples, but you get the point. Like everyday things, maybe you cannot use philosophy or science to determine them. But then the question is, why not? Really, what about life can you not determine either philosophically or scientifically? How to live a good life? Well, how to keep in good health, scientific question, right? And it can also be treated as a philosophical one. What to eat, how much to exercise, how much to sleep, test, science. You can also think about it rationally. What do you mean? What is implied? What is a good life? Philosophy. How to run a country, like I said before. Determine philosophically what is good, for example, and then determine scientifically how to get there, maybe. So on and so forth. So I really don't see what it would be that could not be determined by philosophy or science. So yeah, that's my answer, at least. Use your reason, use testing, see what must be the case. And then, and only then, determine what is right and what is wrong.